A lazy wife who neglects her chores like this should leave the house. My mother-in-law said. I am being blamed. My mother-in-law looked at me with a stern gaze. My sister-in-law said, I will take care of Mom and Scott, so you are not needed here. You always look so tired and gloomy. My sister-in-law, who does no household work at all, said this with a look of disdain. Wait, Scott. Your mother and sister are too cruel. I sought help from my husband, but he too spoke with contempt. Just as Mom and sister said, a wife who is only focused on work and cannot do household chores is of no use. Besides, I'm now in a good relationship with a young part-timer, so you are no longer needed. Pack your things and leave quickly. I was stunned while the three of them cast at me to get out of the house. While listening to their words, I looked down and clenched my fists tightly. Still, I tried to remain as calm as possible and said understood. I will leave. The downfall of the family that has always put everything on me is about to begin. My name is Kristen. I am 32 years old, working at a company while taking care of my family. Nowadays, most women continue to work after marriage, and since I'm passionate about my job, I have continued to work at the company I joined as a new graduate. During a busy morning preparation, my husband started a conversation. Hey Kristen, can you take care of this? The deadline for the tax return is approaching. He handed me a pile of bills and receipts. Again? I wish you'd handle your own shop's accounts. I replied seriously, but Scott averted his gaze. You know I'm not good at this kind of detailed work, right? You're always a big help, thank you. Scott and I got married 5 years ago. He was working at a restaurant I frequented, and our conversation there led to us getting along. As we got to know each other better, we started dating and eventually got married. Scott has fulfilled his long-term dream of opening a cafe and is currently running it. However, when it comes to the tedious tasks like buy-in, office work, and accounting, he tends to rely on me just like with the taxes. Sighing, I headed towards the entrance when my mother-in-law approached me. Kristen, I feel like eating Chinese today. Can you take care of it? Understood. Could you please wash the rice instead? My mother-in-law frowned and said, Why do I have to do it? I don't want to. You should come home early and take care of it. Also, Jenny and the kids will be back this weekend, so please prepare meals that the children can eat. What? Okay, understood. I reluctantly answered and left the scene. When Scott and I got married, I had hoped for a life with just the two of us. However, Scott had a different idea. Scott said, My father passed away, and my sister is already married, so I'm worried about leaving Mom alone. Since the house is big, I think it's good for us to live together. I had no choice but to agree. As a result, we started living in my mother-in-law's house with her. When we first started living with my mother-in-law, who is not good at household chores, the house was quite messy. After my father-in-law passed away, my mother-in-law had been living on her pension alone. That pension was mostly used for eating out, as she hated cooking. Scott sees household chores as a woman's job and shows no willingness to help. While continuing to work full-time, I am responsible for all the household chores. Jenny, my sister-in-law, also comes back often with her children even after getting married and leaving the house. When she comes over, the burden of household chores naturally doubles. This morning, when I heard that they would be coming over this weekend, I thought to myself, not again. While thinking about this, the dreaded weekend arrived. Ideally, weekends away from work should be a time to rest, but when Jenny's children come asking to play, it's hard to say no. While taking care of the children all by myself, I also need to prepare meals. In the midst of this business, my sister-in-law made an unexpected statement. Kristen, I'm actually in the midst of getting a divorce and will be staying here with the children starting next month. Hope to get along with you. I hadn't heard about that. I answered in surprise. What's the matter? Do you have a problem with it? In response to my sister-in-law's dissatisfied reply, I hurriedly answered. No, it's not like that. Rather, that must have been hard going through a divorce. When are you planning to move in? I asked. The sooner the better, she answered. Knowing that my sister-in-law and her children would be coming back, I was initially bewildered but soon tried to think positively. Since my sister-in-law was a full-time housewife, I thought she would surely be a help with household chores. I hoped that my burden would be lessened. Although I am not particularly close to my sister-in-law, I was hopeful that my load would be lighter. However, that hope was quickly shattered. Perhaps due to being raised by my mother-in-law, my sister-in-law also did not help with any household chores, spending all day in front of the TV and eating snacks. She did not engage in any domestic or external work. I heard that a major factor behind her divorce was her neglect of household duties. I ended up doing the household chores instead of my sister-in-law, as well as preparing meals for her children who are picky eaters. Additionally, preparing for kindergarten drop-offs also became my role. As time went on, I became busier with a new project at work. This led to more days requiring late-night overtime and early morning starts. Upon returning home, the place was so messy that finding a spot to step on the floor was difficult, and I was utterly exhausted. The minute I would come back from work, my family would complain, "Isn't dinner ready yet? Why are you so late?" As I struggled to manage household chores due to my busy schedule, I began receiving harsh comments from my mother and sister-in-law. My mother-in-law said, "The laundry is piling up. Don't cut corners just because you're busy with work." I replied, "Mother, I'm also busy with work." My sister-in-law criticized, "Look how defiant she is towards her mother-in-law. Kristen is scary. And the meals are already made, poor kids. Since you are also home all the time, could you perhaps help a little?" I suggested. Then, my mother-in-law said, "Why would you make Jenny work? Besides, since Scott is a business owner, you shouldn't have to work. If you insist on working, you should at least manage household chores perfectly." I was speechless at her statement, but they looked at me as if it was obvious. That night, feeling at my limit, I talked to Scott. I said, "Even though I understand that work is busy, your mother and sister won't help at all. I'm at my limit." Scott retorted with a glare, "Are you trying to badmouth my mother and sister?" I replied, "It's not like that, but managing everything alone is impossible. I wish at least you would support me. I'm busy with the business. You might not understand since you're just an employee, but running a store is really hard. Don't make your work my burden." Still, as I was at a loss for words, Scott fell asleep then and there, leaving me to ponder alone again. However, shortly after, a good idea came to me. I quickly completed some online shopping, then took the rest of the day off. A few days later, various new household appliances were delivered to our home. I bought a drum washing machine, a cleaning robot, and kitchen appliances that cook automatically. Since there was no one to help with household chores, I wanted to reduce the burden as much as possible. Therefore, I decided to introduce the latest household appliances to make life more convenient. While the washing machine was being delivered, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law came over. "Did you buy a new washing machine without asking?" "The old one still works." My mother-in-law approached me with a look of dissatisfaction. "But this will make laundry much easier and faster," I replied cheerfully. However, my mother-in-law seemed unconvinced and continued, "What is this? A cleaning robot and kitchen appliances, too? Kristen, come here." I was summoned to the living room where my mother-in-law and sister-in-law were sitting, and I was instructed to sit on the floor. Scott was also there, sitting confidently next to my mother-in-law. When I asked, "What's the matter?" my mother-in-law exclaimed loudly, "What do you mean, what's the matter? Buying appliances to make it easier for you with the household money? What were you thinking?" "I'm not trying to be lazy. I just want to make household chores more efficient," I argued back. "It's not about that," my mother-in-law criticized. "People nowadays rely too much on machines for everything." Then my sister-in-law joined in. Exactly, Kristen. The appliances are still good, and though Scott is a business owner, you're wasting too much money. While my sister-in-law glared at me, Scott also seemed to nod in agreement next to her. I tried to argue back regarding that, but my sister-in-law didn't let me finish, always looking for the easy way out, and you can't even do household chores properly? What were you thinking? She criticized me. Despite wanting to fight back, I remained silent. Angered by my silence, my mother-in-law couldn't hold back anymore and blurted out, "A lazy wife who neglects her chores like this should leave the house." Shocked by her words, I looked at my mother-in-law, who was glaring at me. "With Mom and Scott here, we don't need you." Always looking so tired and spreading gloom like a parasite, my sister-in-law hurled harsh words at me too. Her words were in a tone of utter disdain. "Wait, Scott, your mother and sister's way of speaking is too cruel. I've always." I sought Scott's support, but Scott scornfully replied, "What Mom and sister are saying is right. A wife who can't manage household chores is not needed." I stared at Scott in surprise, but he just sneered. "I run a business and have the freedom to spend money. A wife who shops selfishly just to make her own life easier is not needed." I couldn't hide my astonishment and said, "Why would you say that? I'm currently seeing a young part-timer. She's attractive unlike you. Your presence is no longer needed. Pack your things and leave immediately." Scott coldly uttered those words. Stunned by his words, I was subjected to their criticism of being a failure of a wife. While listening to them, I looked down and clenched my fists in anger. After being used and then spoken to in such a manner, I'll show them. I'll make them regret this, I vowed to myself. Facing them with as little change in expression as possible, I said quietly, "Understood. I will leave." "Finally got it, huh? We'll be better off without a useless wife," my mother-in-law said contemptuously. Ignoring her words, I took out something specific from the living room drawer. "Scott, let's get divorced," I said, presenting him with a pre-filled divorce form. Exhausted, I had prepared the divorce form in advance as insurance. "Huh, you had that prepared? Fine, I'll sign it. Don't blame me if you regret it," Scott said mockingly and signed the divorce form on the spot. That day, I packed all my belongings and moved to a short-stay apartment with the divorce form in hand. No one saw me off. Soon after, I submitted the divorce form to the city hall and rented an apartment in my name. Almost simultaneously with the divorce being finalized, I accepted a promotion opportunity I had previously turned down due to household responsibilities, finally becoming a manager. Achieving career advancement that I had long given up on further fueled my passion for work. An environment where no one hindered my tasks was my greatest joy. About a week after leaving the house, I started receiving calls from my former mother-in-law. However, I was busy and had no desire to speak with someone who had once looked down on me. Therefore, I consistently ignored her calls. A year passed, and one holiday while I was relaxing at home, I received another call from my former mother-in-law. This time, I decided to answer the phone and end it once and for all. "Hello? Kristen, you finally answered. You're terrible. How could you ignore my calls for a whole year?" I could hear my mother-in-law's flustered voice from the other end. "Do you need something?" I responded indifferently. "Well, first, how are you doing, Kristen? Are you doing well?" My mother-in-law asked as if probing. I answered, "How I am doing? I've rented an apartment for myself and am working hard. I've been promoted and my income has increased. I'm living a comfortable life." My former mother-in-law sounded a bit puzzled, but continued really. "So, Kristen, would you consider coming back?" Trying to persuade me to come back. I felt a chill at her sugary voice but asked, "Why now?" "Actually, we're in a tight financial situation," I said coldly with a smile. "I see. I heard Scott's Cafe is making less than $1,000 a month, and neither you nor your daughter are helping, right? You knew that." I was well aware that Scott's Cafe was only making about $800 a month in profit since I was in charge of the accounting. Despite boasting about being a business owner, Scott had not been managing sales or administrative tasks properly and seemed unaware of the reality. I was handling the accounting and buy-in, so I'm well aware of the situation. You should have said something. I had no idea that you were a manager at a major company and financially providing for us. Yes, indeed. I was contributing over $3,000 a month to the household. That was the basis of your living. I was aware that Scott's Cafe was hardly making any profit. Therefore, a significant portion of my income went to providing living expenses for my in-laws. After I left, Scott must have realized for the first time that he couldn't make ends meet with just his cafe's income. My former mother-in-law pleaded earnestly, "Kristen, please, I want you to come back. By the way, how is Scott's Cafe doing now?" I ignored my former mother-in-law's request and asked out of curiosity. "That place might not last till next month. The part-timer has also left." That's to be expected. With such careless management, it's impossible to maintain the store. Who would want to work under someone who is high in self-esteem but slacks off on important tasks? As I laughingly spoke, my former mother-in-law was left speechless on the other end of the phone. "Shall we end this conversation? I'll be busy from here on out." In a panicked tone, my former mother-in-law said, "Wait. Since you left, the house has become a complete mess." "A mess? What do you mean?" I inquired. According to my former mother-in-law, the in-laws' house had become completely disorganized since there was no one to take care of the chores. With children around and no one to tidy up, the house was cluttered, no one was cooking, and they had to rely on eating out or buying meals, leading to increased food expenses. Additionally, the washing machine broke, and they had no funds to purchase a new one. My mother-in-law said, "If only you had left those appliances behind." I counted, "Aren't those the appliances you called for being lazy? Why shouldn't I be able to take with me what I bought with my own money?" I regret saying such things, but I never imagined that the house would change so much just because there was no one to do the chores. I confronted my former mother-in-law's angry demeanor. "Why is it that 3 adults can't do household chores? What are my sister-in-law and Scott doing?" My former mother-in-law spoke in a calm voice. "Scott has been unsettled since the part-timer left and the cafe's income stopped. Since then, he just stays at home and doesn't help with anything." "Oh, so much for being a business owner who could freely spend money," I replied sarcastically. "Moreover, Jenny hasn't made any move towards employment and has abandoned household duties. On top of that, she keeps asking me for pocket money for herself and her children. My pension isn't enough to cover all this." I was told by your daughter that you didn't need me because she was there, right?" My sharp retort was met with more sweet talk from my former mother-in-law. "Kristen, please. I can't make ends meet with just my pension. I have no intention of returning. Nevertheless, it seems like your children are quite the parasites, aren't they?" I said, leaving my former mother-in-law without a rebuttal. As I was about to hang up, she pleaded even more. "Kristen, we'll change our ways, so please come back and let's live happily like before." "What? How can one live happily with an unwanted wife?" I scoffed. After a moment of confusion, my former mother-in-law appealed further. "I admit our mistakes. We're family, so let's help each other out. Without help, we won't be able to pay the property tax and we'll have to sell the house. I have no obligation or affection to extend my help. Please sort it out yourselves." With that, the unwanted wife will take her leave. Ignoring her screams, I turned off the phone and blocked my former mother-in-law's number. Relaxing at my clean home and enjoying a cup of coffee, a smile crossed my face. 3 months later, when I happened to pass by the location of Scott's former cafe, it was already an empty lot. The store had indeed closed. Furthermore, a sold sign was up at my former in-law's house. From a conversation with a neighbor I met by chance, I learned they had hurriedly sold the house and were now living a difficult life in a small apartment, causing trouble with daily arguments and unpleasant smells, and receiving numerous complaints from neighbors. It's so typical of them, not supporting themselves and their household through honest work and independence. I looked at my former in-laws' house with a detached gaze and left. Meanwhile, I continued to focus on my work. Recently, a sincere and earnest colleague asked me out, and we started dating with marriage in mind. Remarriage doesn't seem to be that far away. This time, I truly hope I'll find happiness. It's unthinkable for someone without an academic background like you to teach. It will negatively affect her academics, so stay away. Upon learning that I was supporting my niece academically, my sister-in-law directed her anger at me. Sophia, why are you interacting with someone like her? What will you do if you end up like her? My sister-in-law seemed to perceive my presence as something harmful. Her cold attitude drained my patience. Amy, think before you speak. Who do you think contributes to our comfortable life? Isn't it because Mary works hard at home? In response to my mother-in-law's gentle words, my sister-in-law became even more emotional. Why are you defending her? Isn't it her duty to handle household chores? She's not just doing housework. She works hard and contributes a lot to the household. You just gallivant around without contributing. If anything, you should be grateful to Mary. Do you really believe she's working earnestly? I can't imagine someone like her being entrusted with essential tasks. My sister-in-law then grabbed my desktop computer and threw it out of the window. What are you doing? You're probably pretending to work hard without achieving anything. Leave this house immediately. I rushed outside to check on my computer, but it was damaged irreparably. I had also lost the valuable work data I had saved. I was genuinely shocked and disappointed by her immature actions. I couldn't imagine continuing to live together under such circumstances. I had been tolerating it for the sake of my relationship with my husband and mother-in-law, but this incident pushed me beyond my limits. I left a message and decided to return to my parents. I am Mary, 29 years old. Last year, I started a new life with my beloved husband, Sean. Initially, we imagined living in a city apartment as we both worked nearby. However, Sean was always concerned about his mother's health. His mother often experienced knee pain due to her previous job, and walking even a short distance required frequent breaks. Knowing this, we suggested living together. Upon hearing our proposal, she brightened up and said, "Mary, you want to live with us?" I'm so happy. She's a genuinely kind-hearted person and warmly welcomed me. However, there was a concern. My sister-in-law, Amy, was obsessed with academic backgrounds. During our first family meal, my educational background came up and her demeanor changed. "Mary, you didn't go to college, right? Why would Sean choose someone like you?" She spoke to me in a somewhat harsh manner. "Sis, that's not a nice thing to say. But you graduated from a national university, Sean, and I graduated from a famous private university. Couldn't you find someone smarter and more charming? What's the merit of marrying someone with a lower education?" At her words, my mother-in-law reprimanded, "Amy, stop it. Mary, I'm sorry for the rude things," she said. But I was already left speechless on the spot. My mother-in-law also looked down, biting her lip. I grew up with my hard-working mother after losing my father at a young age. Unable to afford college, I started working. In such circumstances, I was fortunate to be able to work at a tax accountant's office, and then another opportunity came my way. My boss said, "Why don't you try getting a certified public accountant qualification? Mary, I believe you can do it," giving me encouragement. With his support, I embarked on a new challenge, hoping to secure better job opportunities and income, and support my mother more. My husband understood this and conveyed my efforts to my sister-in-law. However, she remained cold. "If Mary becomes pregnant, I hope the child won't take after her and will be intelligent." Such words came out of her mouth. Those words struck me deeply and unexpectedly. I wondered if I felt this way just because I had only a high school diploma. Although I found it perplexing, I didn't want to escalate the situation, so I refrained from further discussion. After that, my sister-in-law would often mock me over trivial things. For example, when I was cooking, she'd say things like, "Mary, can't you do it a bit faster?" Or during casual conversations, she would comment, "I really had fun during my university days," in a way that seemed to mock me. What bothered me was that she would say similar things to her daughter, Sophia. She would repeatedly advise Sophia, "When you grow up, make sure to go to a good university." Sophia, being a kind-hearted child, seemed to always listen to her mother's words obediently. My sister-in-law had high expectations for Sophia and was now starting to prepare for her junior high school entrance exam. The school Sophia was aiming for was S Academy Junior High, where my sister-in-law taught part-time. Although she doesn't have a teaching license and isn't a regular teacher, she took this role because she wanted to avoid additional responsibilities and work. She would deliberately say to Sophia in front of me, "Let's work hard together for the future." It was so frustrating that I would bite my lip. But when I thought of my beloved husband and my kind mother-in-law, I didn't have the courage to confront my sister-in-law. I didn't want to drag them into any trouble. My sister-in-law and I only met a few times a year. I kept telling myself that if I just endured her behavior, everything would be okay. However, an unexpected development awaited us. One day, my sister-in-law suddenly came to our house, holding Sophia's hand. "Mom, I got divorced, so we'll be staying here for a while. Please take care of us," she said nonchalantly, sitting on the living room sofa as if it were her home. Both my mother-in-law and I were shocked by this sudden news. "What? Divorce? Why all of a sudden? What happened?" My mother-in-law's face was filled with surprise and concern. My sister-in-law responded with a sigh. "That man was so annoying till the end. He kept complaining about the smallest things and never listened to me. But to divorce just because of that?" Before my mother-in-law could continue, she stopped herself. "It's not just that," my sister-in-law replied with a bitter smile. "When I asked for alimony during the divorce, he only agreed to pay $600. After being together for so long, I was shocked by the amount. So I thought it would be better to come back home where I don't have to worry about living expenses. Plus, I wanted to spend more time with you, Mom." She showed a slight smile and held her mother's hand. "I can live peacefully in this house." She then laid back on the sofa, scrolling through her smartphone with unpacked bags and boxes scattered around the room. My mother-in-law and I were lost for words, watching this chaotic scene. A look of surprise and confusion was evident on my mother-in-law's face, and I shared those feelings as well. After a while, my sister-in-law handed me some of her clothes, asking, "Mary, can you wash these for me later?" I suggested that they should be sent to the dry cleaners, but she replied self-centeredly, "You could do that much for me, right?" From then on, not only did her requests increase, but her troublesome behavior also intensified. One day, I discovered an oil-based pen stain on the laundry, which was clearly her doing. Upon seeing me sigh at the stain, she remarked smugly, "Oh, did I make a little mistake?" Then she added, "People with low education can't even do housework properly, can they? I wonder if there's any value in living for someone as useless as you?" Her actions were causing my stress levels to peak. I reached my breaking point and finally decided to discuss it with my husband. "I work all day and still have to deal with housework when I get home. It's a real burden when she purposely makes things dirty. I understand. It's hard for me to see you going through this," my husband replied, listening to me quietly. He promised we'd find a solution together. That night, he confronted my sister-in-law about her behavior. My husband's warm words and actions always gave me a sense of security. However, from the next day, the harassment from my sister-in-law escalated even further. "You think Sean protects you, don't you? But to others, you just seem overly dependent. Relying only on a man doesn't make you strong." I don't have any intention of being dependent. Depending on someone, being protected by them. To others, you might seem like a coward. Can't you stand on your own? Holding back my emotions became harder with each of my sister-in-law's words. Despite facing many hardships in life and taking pride in overcoming them, I couldn't stand being hurt by her words. Seeing my distress, my husband seemed wary from the constant confrontations with his sister and began avoiding her. However, my sister-in-law's harassment didn't stop with me. It began affecting Sophia as well. She was keen on getting Sophia admitted to S Academy and was eager to send her to a tutoring school. Sophia, what's this test score? You can't get into S Academy with these grades. I'm sorry. If your grades don't improve, maybe you will need to hire a tutor. But remember, it's up to how hard you work. Sophia, looking like she was on the verge of tears, nodded. She had already been going to a cram school every day after school. Getting a private tutor would make her lose any free time she had left. Feeling sorry for Sophia, I offered, "Do you want to study with me? I can help you with some things." "Really? Of course, I'm here for you." From then on, we started studying together, careful not to get noticed by my sister-in-law. Although Sophia sometimes struggled, she grasped concepts when taught patiently. "Mary, I got 80 points on my test." "That's great, Sophia. You worked really hard." Sharing that success brought genuine warmth to our hearts. My mother-in-law, who noticed our efforts, sometimes cheered us up secretly by sharing delicious cakes with us. The time spent with her and Sophia became my healing moments. However, this peaceful time was short-lived. One day, while studying with Sophia, my sister-in-law unexpectedly returned home. Seeing us, she shouted, "What are you doing?" "We are just studying." "You, with no formal education, are teaching her? I can't believe it. You might make her grades drop. Stay away." Furthermore, my sister-in-law slapped Sophia on the shoulder and yelled at her. "Why are you spending time with her? Do you want to end up like her?" The way she spoke about me as if I was contagious made my anger boil over. All the things I had been holding back just overflowed. As I told you before, I only graduated high school due to financial reasons. Judging someone solely based on their educational background is wrong. "What did you say?" My sister-in-law exploded even more. Hearing the commotion, my mother-in-law intervened. "What's happening here? Mary is getting too close to Sophia. What if her low educational background influences Sophia? Do you know who's ensuring our comfortable lifestyle? Haven't you seen how hard Mary works at home?" My mother-in-law's calm yet pointed words only fueled my sister-in-law's anger. "Why are you defending her? Anybody can do household chores." "It's not just chores. She's working hard, contributing to our household. All you do is go out and play, indifferent to what's happening at home. You should be more grateful." "Are you saying she has a proper job? I can't believe it." With that, my sister-in-law grabbed my PC from the desk and threw it out the window. "Why would you do that? That job you cherish so much probably isn't that big of a deal. Stop acting so pretentious. Just leave this house already." I rushed outside in a panic to check my computer, but it was broken beyond repair. It contained my work's vital data. I felt anger and disappointment towards her childish behavior. Living together with someone like this was then impossible. For a long time, I had valued my relationship with my husband and mother-in-law, trying to protect our household. However, I had felt my limits then. That night, I left a note and decided to return to my parents' home. The next morning, I received repeated calls from my sister-in-law, but I ignored all of them. However, within a week, my husband and sister-in-law showed up at my workplace. He strongly conveyed his apologies, saying, "Amy's completely wrong this time. Amy, please apologize sincerely." Though encouraged by Sean, her dissatisfaction was evident from her attitude. "Why should I apologize? Sophia's grades have clearly dropped in her absence. Mary's presence must have been important not only for Sophia but for you as well." Indeed, I had felt guilty deep down about Sophia's academic struggles. It seems there's no other way. "Mary, come back home and support Sophia's studies. I never wanted to live with someone with your educational background, but I'll endure it for Sophia's sake." I had wanted to return for Sophia's sake, but her arrogant tone nearly extinguished that desire. If you truly care about Sophia's education, why don't you teach her yourself, Amy? You strongly recommended her to study for exams, so why are you neglecting her? I don't want to be told anything by someone like you. I encourage Sophia to study for exams because I don't want her to end up in a lowly position like you. Is that really all there is to it? I want Sophia to grow up to be an elite adult like me. I want her to graduate from a renowned university and build a career like the one I've established at the prestigious S Academy, she continued, flaunting her own success. Unable to bear the exchange, my company's director intervened and tried to resolve the matter peacefully. Excuse me, I assume you are Mary's family? Nice to meet you. Yes, that's right. My husband greeted the director politely. I have overheard a little. I'd like to affirm that Mary has shown tremendous capability and contributed significantly to our company. Really? I never thought you'd hire someone with just a high school degree. Education doesn't solely define a person's abilities. Even compared to university graduates, Mary has been producing equal if not better results. My director's words left my sister-in-law with a surprised expression. Do you truly believe that? I think educational background determines one's status and value. The director responded calmly. You mentioned you work at S Academy. May I have your name? My name is Amy Smith. You're Ms. Smith. I've heard about your troublesome attitude and behavior. Are you implying Mary has been speaking ill of me? No, I haven't heard about you from Mary, but I have heard about you from the principal and other staff at S Academy. Amy's eyes widened, clearly taken aback. Here's the reason. The director handed her a business card. It clearly read S Academy Board Chairman. You're the chairman. Both my husband and I were utterly shocked, lost for words. Upon understanding the information on the card, Amy's demeanor changed instantly. Her eyes filled with fear and surprise. I've heard about your behavior and issues within the academy. Delegating your work, shirking responsibilities, and even discriminatory actions towards students. Numerous problems have been pointed out. In a panic state, Amy responded, "That's not true." Of course, I was considering a direct response. Upon hearing this, my sister-in-law started to panic. I can't lose my current job. I just got divorced, and it's tough to support my daughter and myself. She begged desperately with a serious look on her face. The principal replied calmly but with deep understanding. Our school's policies and philosophies are clear. We cannot tolerate work behavior like yours. My sister-in-law was devastated and burst into tears on the spot. The next day, an official notice from S Academy confirmed that she had to leave the school. Unable to hide her shock, she returned home in confusion. Afterwards, she locked herself in her room, and occasionally, voices of anger and dissatisfaction could be heard. This situation started affecting the family dynamics. Her stress was often directed at Sophia and her mother, and the tension in the household grew day by day. How can you not even solve this simple problem? For a sixth grader, this is unacceptable. You will not rest or sleep until you finish this textbook tonight, so make sure you get it right. Sophia had been studying under this strict guidance day after day. Her fatigue was evident on her face, and I was worried she might fall. Amy, stop pushing Sophia like this. Think about what you're doing. My mother-in-law interjected, unable to bear the situation. Mom, shut up. I don't want to hear anything you say. Taking the situation seriously, my mother-in-law finally told Amy to leave the house. Amy, you can't stay here any longer. Leave now. Why should I be the one to leave? You're the one pushing Sophia to the brink and harming her mental health. If you care about her as your own daughter, leave this house now. I can't believe you're trying to take my daughter away from me. My mother-in-law asked the distressed Sophia. Sophia, what do you want? Do you want to stay in this house or go somewhere else with your mother? Sophia's answer was clear. I want to stay in this house. I'm scared to be with Mom. Shocked by these words, Amy lowered her head and cried. But my mother-in-law's resolve was firm, and she escorted her daughter out of the house. Reflect sincerely on your actions. What you did can never be tolerated." With that, my mother-in-law closed the door. Afterwards, my sister-in-law ended up losing her job and home. She tried various jobs, but due to her personality, she struggled, and her difficult life continued. With her gone, I returned to my mother-in-law's home and regained our peaceful daily life. Sophia regained her peace of mind and started to smile every day. When we learned that she wanted to continue her studies, we, as a couple, decided to support her. A year later, Sophia successfully passed the entrance exam to S Academy. As her hard work finally bore fruit, we felt genuine relief and joy. Now, Sophia continues to work hard towards her dream of becoming a teacher. We hope to continue supporting the path